The wind on Glacier 9 did not howl. It screamed. It was a physical weight, a solid wall of pressurized cryogas and ice shards that could strip the paint off a military-grade transport in under 20 minutes. Hugh gripped the yoke of his skiff, his knuckles white inside the heated gloves. The thrusters fought against the crosswind, vibrating through the chassis and into his bones. Warning, the synthetic voice of Kettle cut through the roar of the storm outside. Hull integrity is at 98%. External temperature is dropping below -60. I suggest we do not die today, Hugh. It would be terrible for my resale value. Hugh ignored the AI. He stared through the reinforced glass at the endless white void. This was why he lived here. The moon of Glacier 9 was the armpit of the galaxy, a frozen rock ignored by the United Humanity Federation, and too cold for the delicate sensibilities of the Black Star Vampire Empire. It was the only place where the silence was loud enough to drown out the noise in his head. He reached into the breast pocket of his heavy coat. His fingers brushed the cold, smooth metal of a small device. Dawnfire. It was just a storage drive, innocuous and small, but it felt heavier than the engine block of the skiff. It contained the encrypted genetic sequence for a weapon that could turn the blood of a vampire into boiling acid. Or at least, that was the theory Dr. Rowan Blake had pitched before the armistice. Now it was just a relic, a ghost in his pocket, much like the ghosts that haunted his sleep. Approach vector calculated, Kettle announced. Cabin is 3 kilometers north. I am detecting an anomaly in the local security grid. Hugh frowned, his eyes narrowing. Define anomaly. The front door is open, Kettle said, the flat tone making the statement even more absurd. Hugh killed the throttle, letting the skiff slide over a ridge of blue ice. That is impossible. The locks are biometric. Only I can open them. Correction, Kettle replied. The locks are biometric. However, the mechanism has been bypassed by a biological override agent. Someone did not just pick the lock, Hugh. They convinced the lock that they were you. Or rather, they convinced the lock that it wanted to open. Hugh pulled the skiff into the hangar bay carved out of the ice cliff. The moment the landing gear touched the metal grating, he was moving. He grabbed the kinetic rifle from the rack, checking the charge. Full battery. Enough to punch a hole through a tank. Stay with the ship, Kettle, Hugh ordered. Keep the engines hot. I shall keep the seat warm, Kettle quipped. Do try not to get murdered. I have not finished compiling my memoirs. Hugh stepped out into the biting cold of the hangar. The airlock to the living quarters was cycling. He moved with the practiced silence of a veteran, the muscle memory of the night war taking over. He had spent 10 years hunting things in the dark. He knew how to clear a room. He reached the inner door. It was indeed ajar, swinging slightly in the draft. Snow had drifted into the entryway, not melting, but sitting there like white dust. He pushed the door open with the barrel of his rifle, sweeping the room. The cabin was modest. A fireplace roared on the far wall, fueled by synthetic logs. Heavy rugs covered the floor. It was a human space, warm, brown, safe. Except for the 2 bodies on the floor. Hugh froze. His finger tightened on the trigger. They lay on the bearskin rug in front of the fire, curled into fetal positions. They were stark naked. Their skin was the color of moonlight on fresh snow, translucent enough that he could almost see the faint bluish pulse of veins beneath. They were shivering violently, but there was no sweat. Instead, a faint cold vapor rose from their skin like dry ice, sublimating. They were not human. The elongated elegance of their limbs, the sharpness of their shoulder blades, the unnatural symmetry of their features. And the smell. It hit him like a physical blow, the scent of ozone and copper. Vampires. In his home. Kettle, Hugh whispered into his comms. Lock down the cabin. Seal the vents. Now. Lockdown initiated, Kettle replied in his ear. New statistic probability of you being sued for holding the daughters of someone in your basement has just skyrocketed. Also, probability of death by exsanguination has increased by 4,000%. "Shut up," Hugh hissed. He stepped closer, the rifle trained on the head of the larger one. She looked to be in her late teens by human standards, with hair like spun silver. The smaller one, perhaps a year or two younger, had hair as dark as the void between stars. Scattered around them were piles of shredded fabric. Hugh looked closely. It was human clothing. Flannel shirts, denim jeans. The edges of the fabric were singed, as if burned by acid. He realized with a jolt of revulsion what had happened. They had tried to wear human clothes to blend in, but the synthetic fibers and dyes had reacted with their photosensitive epidermis. In this environment without their protective field generators, human materials were toxic to them. They had clawed the clothes off as they burned. Hugh stood over them, the enemy, the monsters that had turned the colony of Aegis Prime into a slaughterhouse. He saw the faces of his wife and parents in the firelight, superimposed over the shivering forms on the floor. He should pull the trigger. It would be easy. 2 shots. Drag the bodies out to the storm. Let the ice take them. It was justice. It was a war. The silver-haired girl let out a low, pained whimper. It was a sound of pure animal misery. Hugh's hand shook. "Damn it," he cursed. "Damn it all to hell." He safetied the rifle and slung it over his shoulder. He grabbed the heavy thermal blankets from the back of the sofa's specialized survival gear, made of inert, non-reactive polymers. He knelt. He hated himself for doing it, but he knelt. He threw the first blanket over the silver-haired girl, tucking the edges under her shivering form. He did the same for the dark-haired one. "Do not bite me," he muttered more to himself than them. "You bite me and I put a hole in you. Understood?" The warmth of the fire and the blankets seemed to work. The shivering subsided slightly. The silver-haired girl stirred. Her eyelids fluttered open. Hugh recoiled. Her eyes were not human. They were solid orbs of violet bioluminescence, swirling like miniature nebulas. She stared at him, disoriented, her gaze focusing on his face. Then, she did something impossible. She reached out a hand, thin and trembling, and touched his knee. "Father," she rasped. Her voice was like wind through crystal shards. Hugh slapped her hand away. "Do not call me that. I am human." "You are a leech. We are clear on the biology." The girl pushed herself up to a sitting position, clutching the blanket to her chest. She looked at him with an intensity that made his skin crawl. "You are Hugh, the engineer, the breaker of chains." "I am a retired mechanic," Hugh said, standing up and backing away to keep his distance. "And you are trespassing. Give me one reason why I should not space you right now." "Because of the blood debt," the girl said. She coughed a dry, racking sound. "I am Louise, first daughter of the Umbral Crown, adopted by Queen Alma herself. And you are the one who pulled me from the vats." Hugh stopped. The memory hit him sideways. 10 years ago. A covert ops raid on a research facility on the border of the neutral zone. Intel said the vampires were experimenting on human children. Hugh and his squad had breached the lab, guns blazing. They had found tanks, glass cylinders filled with red fluid. Inside were children. He had smashed the glass. He had carried 2 of them out, burning his arms on the acidic fluid, running through collapsing corridors, while the facility exploded around them. He had handed them off to the medevac team and gone back to the fight. He never asked what happened to them. He assumed they were human refugees. "That was you," Hugh asked, his voice hollow. "I thought I was saving kids, human kids." "We were experiments," Louise said, her violet eyes dimming with exhaustion. "Hybrids, rejects. The Empire wanted to dispose of us. You saved us. Your blood, when you carried us, you were wounded. Your blood mixed with the suspension fluid. It marked us. A blood signature. In our law that makes you kin." Hugh felt sick. He felt like the floor was tilting. "I did not save you to be your father. I saved you because I thought you were victims." "We were," a new voice piped up. The second girl, the dark-haired one, had pushed her head out of the blanket cocoon. She looked terrible. Her skin was patchy and red where the clothes had burned her. but her eyes, bright gold, were dancing with a strange, frantic amusement. Also, the dark-haired girl chattered, her teeth clicking together. "If you are our blood father, you really need to upgrade your heating system. And your wardrobe. Seriously, Wool, it is basically sandpaper dipped in acid for us. I am Pauline, by the way." The funny one. Louise is the brooding one. We come as a set. "Shut up, Pauline," Louise hissed. "I am just saying," Pauline continued, pulling the blanket tighter. "You saved us. We tracked your biometric signature across 3 sectors. We almost died crashing our shuttle, and now we are naked in your living room. It is not exactly a fairy tale reunion. Do you have any synthetic plasma? Or maybe a cat? I could eat a cat." "No cats," Hugh said flatly. "And no plasma." "Toast?" Pauline asked, hopeful. "I can't digest it, but I like the crunch." "Pauline," Louise warned again, her voice gaining strength. She looked at Hugh, her expression hardening into something regal. "We need sanctuary. We have defected." Hugh stared at them. "Defected from the Empire." "You are the Queen's daughters." "Adopted daughters," Louise corrected. "Propaganda tools. They parade us around to show how benevolent the Queen is to the rescued experiments. But Duke Malric intends to liquidate us. He says we are impurities. He convinced the Council to revoke our blood rights." "So you ran," Hugh said. "To me, the man who hates your species more than anything in the universe. You are the only human who ever touched us without trying to kill us or study us," Louise said softly. "We had nowhere else to go." Hugh rubbed his face with his hands. This was a nightmare, a hallucination brought on by bad oxygen recycling. "Warning," Kettle's voice blared, suddenly stripped of all sarcasm. "Proximity alert. Massive gravitational displacement detected in high orbit. Identify Imperial flagship class. It is the Umbral Crown Hugh. The Queen is here." The cabin groaned. The timber beams creaked as the artificial gravity of a massive vessel pushed against the moon's natural field. Outside the window, the white storm turned black. A shadow had fallen over the world. "She found us," Pauline whispered. The humor vanished from her face, replaced by a terror so raw it looked like a mask. "She tracked the shuttle." "They are locking weapons on the cabin," Kettle reported. "Hugh, I recommend immediate surrender. Or perhaps prayer. I am not equipped for theological arbitration, but I can simulate a priest if you like." "No time." Hugh grabbed his rifle again. "Get behind the sofa, both of you." "It will not matter," Louise said, standing up. She let the blanket hang loosely around her shoulders like a cape. "She does not use guns." The front door did not explode. It simply dissolved. The wood and steel disintegrated into black dust as a field of pure entropy washed over it. The storm outside paused, held back by an invisible barrier. A figure stepped through the void where the door had been. She was tall, looming 7 feet in height. She wore armor made of obsidian glass that seemed to drink the light from the room. A crown of black thorns floated an inch above her head, defying gravity. Her skin was marble. Her eyes were voids of absolute darkness, and her presence sucked the warmth out of the air instantly. Queen Alma, the monarch of the Black Stars, the architect of the Night War. 2 heavily armed Praetorian guards flanked her, their weapons glowing with unstable red energy. But Alma did not look at them. She did not look at the rifle Hugh had leveled at her chest. She looked at the 2 girls shivering by the fireplace. She looked at the cheap thermal blankets. She looked at the human clothing shredded on the floor. Then she looked at Hugh. The silence stretched for 10 seconds. It was heavy enough to crush lungs. "Why?" Alma said, her voice a low hum that vibrated in Hugh's teeth. "Are my vampire daughters naked in your cabin, human?" Hugh did not lower the rifle. "Because your technology is incompatible with flannel, and your parenting skills involve leaving them to die in a lab. I fixed the first problem. The second one seems to be systemic." The The Praetorian guards raised their weapons, a high-pitched whine filling the room. Alma raised a hand, stopping them. "You speak bold words for a creature whose heart beats so loudly I can hear it breaking," Alma said. She stepped further into the room, the floorboards frosted over beneath her boots. "You have abducted Imperial royalty. That is an act of war. The armistice is null and void the moment I give the order." "I did not abduct anyone," Hugh retorted. "They broke in. They are refugees. Ask them." Alma turned her dark gaze to Louise. "Is this true, daughter? Do you seek shelter with this livestock?" Louise stepped forward. She trembled, but she did not look down. "He is not livestock. He is my blood father, and he has more honor in his silence than your entire court has in its songs." Alma's expression did not change, but the temperature in the room dropped another 10 degrees. "You speak treason." "I speak truth," Louise shouted, her voice cracking. "I know about the purge orders. I know Malric signed them. And I know you let him. You were going to let him slaughter us just to appease the war faction." "Malric acts for the good of the Empire," Alma said cold. "Malric acts for Malric," Louise pointed a shaking finger at Hugh. "This man saved us when your people put us in jars, and you call him a monster. His family, the colony, at Aegis Prime. Malric ordered that massacre. It wasn't a military engagement. It was a harvest. They drained them dry, mother. Children, elders, everyone." Hugh stiffened. Hugh. He had suspected it. He had known it in his gut. But hearing it confirmed, hearing that it was a sanctioned harvest, and not just collateral damage, tore the scar open. "You knew," Hugh said to Alma, his voice dangerous and low. "You signed the armistice with one hand and wiped the blood off the other." "War is complex," Alma said dismissively. "Decisions were made." "My wife was not a decision," Hugh roared. He threw a datapad onto the coffee table. It skidded across the surface, projecting a hologram, a grainy, recovered image of his wife and young son smiling in the sunlight of Aegis Prime, days before the end. "That is what you destroyed. Not targets. People." Alma looked at the hologram. For a microsecond, the darkness in her eyes flickered. A ripple of something curiosity crossed her face. "He calls you mother," Hugh said, stepping between the queen and the girls. "But he does not know you. I know you. You are a plague. And if you want to take them, you will have to step over me." "That," one of the guards sneered, "can be arranged." "Silence," Alma commanded. The guard fell silent instantly. The queen looked at the scene, the defiance in Louise's eyes, the terror masking humor in Pauline's, the absolute suicidal resolve in the human male. And outside, beyond the cabin, she knew the galaxy was watching. Her arrival had been detected. The Federation scanners were pinging her ship. If she slaughtered a human veteran, and her own daughters here, the scandal would shatter the fragile peace she had spent 50 years constructing. Malric would use the chaos to seize the throne. She needed a narrative. She needed control. A slow, terrifying smile spread across Alma's pale lips. "You claim rights to them," Alma said softly. "You claim blood kinship. You claim moral superiority over my empire." "I claim they are free," Hugh said. "Freedom is earned," Alma declared, her voice amplifying, projecting not just into the room, but broadcasting through the umbral crown systems to the entire fleet and via the quantum net to the Federation monitoring stations. "Citizens of the Empire, citizens of the Federation," Alma announced, her voice resonating like a bell. "We stand at a crossroads. This human accuses my court of treachery. My own daughters seek his protection. To simply take them back would be tyranny. To leave them would be weakness." She looked straight at Hugh. "There is an ancient law. When bloodlines are disputed, when a lower caste challenges the claim of the High Court, we do not debate. We dance," Louise gasped. "No, you cannot mean." "A wedding battle," Alma proclaimed. "The right of Crimson Union." Hugh lowered his rifle, slightly confused. "A what?" "A trial," Alma said, her eyes locking onto him. "You wish to be their father. You wish to protect them. Then you will prove you are worthy of their bloodline. You will stand as their war groom in the Black Palace." "I am not marrying anyone," Hugh snapped. "Especially not them." "It is not a marriage of affection, human," Alma said coldly. "It is a binding of fate. You will fight. You will perform the blood song. If you survive the rituals and defeat the champions Malric sends against you, you win. The girls are yours. The Empire will recognize humanity as a sovereign equal. The harvesting stops. Forever." "And if I lose?" Hugh asked. "Then you die," Alma said simply. "And humanity will be reclassified from sapient neighbor to primary food source. The armistice ends, and the feeding begins." She turned her cape, swirling in the freezing air. "You have 3 standard days to prepare. Bring your rifle. Bring your anger. You will need both." Alma vanished into the storm, the shadow field collapsing behind her. The door was gone, leaving the cabin open to the screaming wind. Hugh stood there, the cold biting into his face. "Kettle," he said, his voice flat. "Yes, Hugh." "Did I just get engaged to 2 vampire princesses in a death match to save the human race?" "Processing," Kettle hummed. "Yes. Yes, you did. I suggest we start looking for a tailor. And perhaps a lawyer will." Pauline pulled the blanket up to her nose. "Well," she chattered, "at least the wedding reception will have an open bar, right?" Hugh looked at the datapad on the table, the image of his dead wife, flickering in the cold. He touched the pocket with the Dawnfire drive. "Close the blast shields," Hugh ordered, turning away from the storm. "We have work to do." The transition from the surface of Glacier 9 to the belly of the Umbral Crown was not a journey of distance but of dimension. One moment, Hugh was standing in his drafty wood-paneled living room, listening to the wind scream. The next, the entire cabin groaned, the timber complaining under a sudden shift in gravitational pressure. The view outside the reinforced windows shifted from a whiteout blizzard to a suffocating, pulsating darkness. They were inside. The cabin had been scooped up, earth and foundation included, and deposited into a containment bay that looked less like a hangar and more like the inside of a gargantuan beast. The walls were not plated metal, but ribbed obsidian-colored organic matter that throbbed with a slow, rhythmic bioluminescence. Thick cables resembling arteries the size of tree trunks pulsed with crimson light, pumping plasma through the ship's superstructure. "Atmospheric analysis complete," Kettle announced, its voice tinny in the sudden silence. "Oxygen levels are optimal, though there is a high concentration of aerosolized hemoglobin in the air filters. Essentially, we are breathing blood vapor. I hope you are not squeamish, Hugh." Hugh did not answer. He was busy checking the concealment protocols on the device in his pocket. The Dawnfire drive was warm against his chest. "They are taking us to the bridge," Louise said. She was standing by the door, having wrapped herself in a makeshift toga, fashioned from 3 of Hugh's thermal blankets. Her violet eyes were wide, scanning the alien architecture outside the window. "Mother does not keep guests in the hold." "We are not guests," Hugh corrected, checking the charge on his rifle, though he knew it was a security blanket at this point. "We are evidence." The cabin door, or what was left of it, slid open. A squad of Praetorians stood there. They did not speak. They simply gestured with their energy pikes. Hugh stepped out, flanked by the 2 girls. The floor of the hangar was spongy, yielding slightly under his boots. It felt alive. He looked up. Above them, a membrane of transparency offered a view of the cosmos, but it was filtered through the ship's shield technology, turning the stars into streaks of bleeding light. "It is disgusting," Hugh muttered. "It is efficient," Louise countered, though her voice lacked conviction. "Bioships heal themselves. They adapt. They feel." "That is exactly why it is disgusting," Hugh said. They were marched through corridors that resembled the throat of a god. The architecture of the vampire empire was a study in intimidation. Everything was tall, sharp, and wet. They passed windows looking into laboratories where fluids bubbled in floating spheres, and training decks where warriors sparred in zero gravity, moving too fast for the human eye to track. Pauline, who had fashioned her blankets into a sort of hooded cloak, leaned toward Hugh. "If we pass a cafeteria, can we stop?" she whispered. "I know I said I wanted a cat earlier, but I would settle for a synthetic protein bar. Being kidnapped burns a lot of calories." "We are walking to our execution, and you are thinking about snacks," Hugh said. "Priorities, Bloodfather." Pauline grinned, though her hands were trembling beneath the fabric. "If I am going to die, I do not want to do it on an empty stomach. It is bad for the ghost aesthetic." They reached the central command spire. The doors made of interwoven bone and shadow parted. The throne room of the Umbral Crown was a cavern of sensory deprivation. The floor was a lake of still black water that perfectly reflected the ceiling, creating an illusion of infinite space. A single walkway led to the center where Queen Alma sat upon a throne grown from black coral. The court was assembled. Hundreds of vampire nobles stood in silence on tiered platforms. They were beautiful and terrible, their skin pale as parchment, their attire a mix of ancient, ceremonial robes and advanced combat mesh. Duke Malric stood at the foot of the throne. He was a mountain of a creature broader than any human, with skin that looked like gray granite and eyes that burned with red malice. He wore the crimson sash of the war marshal. "This is a farce," Malric's voice boomed, amplifying naturally across the acoustic perfection of the room. "You bring livestock into the sanctum. You drape the failed experiments in human rags and call them royalty." Alma did not rise. She merely tilted her head. "I call them what they are, Malric. And I call this human a challenger." Hugh stepped onto the platform. The air smelled of ozone and ancient dust. He felt the weight of 1,000 predatory eyes on him. He felt small. He felt breakable. And he felt angry. "The challenge has been issued," Alma announced, "to settle the dispute of lineage and the validity of the human-vampire armistice. We shall invoke the right of Crimson Union, the wedding battle." A murmur ran through the court. It sounded like the rustling of dry leaves. "The location shall be the Black Palace," Alma continued. "Neutral ground. The eyes of the Federation and the Empire alike shall witness it." "You mock our traditions," Malric spat, stepping forward. He glared at Hugh with unmasked contempt. "The wedding battle is a sacred rite of synchronization. It requires a bond of soul and blood. This mechanic cannot sing the blood song. He is deaf to the frequencies of the night. He is meat." "Then he will die easily, and you will have your war," Alma said smoothly. "Why are you afraid, Duke?" "I am not afraid," Malric snarled. "I am insulted. We are apex predators. We conquered the Dark Nebula while these apes were still banging rocks together. To elevate him to the status of a wargroom is to spit on the graves of our ancestors. He does not deserve to fight. He deserves to be drained." Hugh stepped forward. The movement was small, but it drew Malric's eye. "You talk a lot for someone who lost the Battle of Orion Sector," Hugh said. His voice was calm, contrasting with the rage in his chest. "I seem to recall your Apex fleet retreating when we introduced you to solar flare missiles." Malric hissed, his fangs extending. "Insect." "Technician," Hugh corrected. "And if this ritual involves me killing you, I am suddenly very interested in the details." Alma smiled. It was a terrifying expression. "The ritual involves 3 stages: the dance of avoidance, the song of judgment, and the duel of synchronization. You human must link your consciousness with Louise and Pauline. You must move as one entity. If you fail to synchronize, the feedback loop will liquefy your brain. If you succeed, you earn the right to face the Duke's champion." "And if I win?" Hugh asked. "Then the girls are yours," Alma said. "And the Empire acknowledges humanity as an equal sovereign power. Hugh looked at Louise and Pauline. They looked terrified. He looked at Malric, who looked ready to tear his throat out. In his mind, Hugh was already running the calculations. He did not care about the wedding. He did not care about equality. He cared about the Dawnfire drive in his pocket. If he could get access to the Black Palace's amplification systems, the same systems used to broadcast the Blood Song, he could upload the Dawnfire code. Instead of broadcasting a song, he would broadcast a kill signal, a frequency that would destabilize the cellular structure of every vampire in the station. It would kill Malric. It would kill Alma. It would kill Louise and Pauline. He pushed that thought down. They were vampires. They were the enemy. The fact that they looked like scared teenagers was just biological camouflage. "I accept," Hugh said. The quarters assigned to them on the Umbral Crown were lavish, which meant they were dark cold and damp. The beds were slabs of stone covered in silk. The food dispenser offered 12 types of synthetic blood and one option for water. "So," Pauline said, sitting cross-legged on the stone slab, trying to balance a data pad on her knee. "We are engaged. This is moving very fast. We have not even discussed finances or who takes out the garbage." Hugh was pacing the room, scanning the walls with a handheld device he had salvaged from his tool belt. "Stop talking." "I talk when I am nervous," Pauline said. "And right now, on a scale of 1 to 10, I am at a solid 15. We are going to the Black Palace, Hugh. Do you know what they do there? They have opera. Constant opera. It is torture." Louise was standing by the window, staring out at the warped tunnel streaming past. She had not spoken since they left the throne room. "We need to train," Hugh said, turning to them. "If this ritual relies on synchronization, we need to know how it works. Explain the blood song." Louise turned. Her face was pale, her expression guarded. "It is not something you can explain with engineering, Hugh. It is resonance. Our blood contains trace elements of unique heavy metals. When we vocalize at certain frequencies, we manipulate the magnetic fields around us. We share memories. We share pain." "Telepathy?" Hugh asked. "Empathy," Louise corrected. "Weaponized empathy." "Great," Hugh muttered. "My favorite emotion." "You cannot do it," Malric had said. And he was probably right. Humans lacked the vocal cords and the blood chemistry. But Dr. Rowan Blake had built the Dawnfire to ride on those exact frequencies. If Hugh could mimic the carrier wave, he could insert the virus. "Teach me," Hugh ordered. The training sessions began immediately. They were grueling. The blood song was not singing in the human sense. It was a series of microtonal vibrations produced deep in the throat, combined with specific mental visualizations. Louise was a harsh instructor. "No," she snapped, pacing around Hugh as he sat on the floor, trying to hold a low humming note. "You are thinking about the sound. You have to think about the feeling. The sound is just the vehicle." "I feel like an idiot," Hugh grumbled, his throat raw. "You sound like a dying engine," Pauline offered helpfully from the corner. She was trying to braid her hair without a mirror. "Try to sound less like a tractor, and more like a cello made of sadness." "Pauline, focus," Louise scolded. "If we do not sync, the feedback will kill him." "And then we die too," Pauline added. "So no pressure, Dad." "Do not call me Dad," Hugh said, closing his eyes. "Okay, try again," he hummed. He focused on the vibration in his chest. He tried to project it toward the girls. For the first 2 days, it was a disaster. Hugh was too rigid. His mind was a fortress of walls and locked doors. He approached the connection like a hacking attempt, forceful, invasive, logical. The girls recoiled from his mental touch. "You are attacking us," Louise said, rubbing her temples after a particularly bad attempt. "You have to open up. You have to let us in." "I do not let people in," Hugh said. "Then we will die on the arena floor," Louise said bluntly. "And Malric will win." They took a break. Hugh sat against the cold wall, drinking water from a pouch. Pauline shimmied over and sat next to him close enough that he could feel the unnatural chill of her skin. "You know," she said, "humans have weird movies. I watched one in your cabin database, Die Hard. Why does he not just wear shoes? It seems like a logistical oversight." Hugh looked at her. "He didn't have time." "He had time to tape a gun to his back," Pauline argued. "He could have taped some cardboard to his feet. Humans prioritize violence over comfort. It is fascinating." Hugh actually cracked a smile. It felt rusty on his face. "It's a metaphor, kid. Persistence through pain." "Is that why you hate us?" Pauline asked. The transition from humor to seriousness was instant. "Because of the pain," Hugh's smile vanished. "I hate you because your people turned my world into a graveyard." "We did not do it," Pauline said softly. "Louise and I, we were in a tank. We were floating in red goo, dreaming about something I do not know. Static." "It does not matter," Hugh said, standing up. "Guilt is collective." "That is stupid," Pauline said. "That is like saying you are guilty for bad pop music because you are human." Hugh looked at Louise. She was watching him, her eyes searching. "Why do you want to save us?" Louise asked. "You have the dawn fire. I can smell the data flux on you. You are planning something." Hugh stiffened. She was sharper than he gave her credit for. "I am planning to win," Hugh lied. "You are planning to burn it all down," Louise said. "I can see it in your posture. You look like a man holding a grenade." "If I am," Hugh challenged, "why haven't you told the Queen?" Louise looked away. "Because I hate this empire as much as you do. I remember the tanks, Hugh. I remember the scientists. Malric used to watch them drain the other children." He laughed. "If you burn it down, maybe that is what we deserve." Hugh felt a pang in his chest. It wasn't pity. It was something closer to respect. "Let's try again," Hugh said, his voice softer. "The connection." He sat down. He closed his eyes. This time, instead of trying to force his way into their minds, he thought about the snow. He thought about the silence of Glacier 9. He thought about the feeling of the cold wind numbing the scars on his skin. He hummed. A low, resonant B-flat. He felt a tug, a mental hook. Suddenly he wasn't in the room. He was in a vast, dark ocean. He saw two lights. One was a cold, sharp diamond Louise. The other was a flickering, chaotic candle Pauline. He drifted toward them. "Hello," Louise's voice echoed in his head. It wasn't sound. It was thought. "Hi," Hugh thought back. "This is weird. Super weird," Pauline's thought voice giggled. "Your mind smells like motor oil and old coffee." "Focus," Louise ordered. "Blend the rhythm." They began to harmonize. The physical sound in the room amplified the air, rippling with visible distortion. Hugh felt their emotions flooding him. Pauline's crushing fear of being abandoned. Louise's heavy, suffocating burden of responsibility. And they felt his. The grief, the anger, the endless grinding loneliness. It was working. The resonance was building. Then it happened. Hugh's concentration slipped. He drifted deeper into the connection than he intended. He touched the core of Louise's memory. He expected to see the labs. He expected to see the war. Instead, he saw a wooden porch. He saw a sunset over a wheat field, a landscape that did not exist on any vampire world. He felt the warmth of a human sun. And he heard a song. It was a simple melody, a lullaby. "Sleep, my little star, the night is not so far." Hugh froze. The connection shattered. He gasped, falling backward onto the stone floor, clutching his chest. Louise screamed, clutching her head. "What was that?" Hugh shouted, scrambling to his feet. "Where did you get that memory?" Louise was hyperventilating, her eyes wide with panic. "I do not know. It is my memory. It is from before the tanks." "That is impossible," Hugh said, his hands shaking. "That is my memory. That is the porch of my house on Aegis Prime. And that song, my wife wrote that song. She only sang it to our son. The silence in the room was absolute. She never recorded it, Hugh whispered. It was never on any network. There is no way you could know it unless Louise had been there. But that was impossible. Louise was a vampire. His wife was human. Someone tampered with us, Louise whispered, horror dawning on her face. The scientists. They didn't just experiment on our bodies. They messed with our minds. They spliced memories. Why? Pauline asked, her voice small. Why would they give us a human memory? To see if it would stick, Hugh realized. A cold dread washed over him. To see if they could graft human consciousness onto vampire biology. You are not just hybrids. You are storage devices. He looked at Louise. Really looked at her. The tilt of her head. The way she furrowed her brow when she was concentrating. It was the same way his wife used to look at him. No, Hugh said. No, that is insane. But the seed was planted. The hatred that had fueled him for a decade suddenly faltered. He wasn't looking at a monster anymore. He was looking at a ghost. High above, in the observation deck, Queen Alma watched the monitor. She saw the moment the connection broke. She saw the look on Hugh's face. She let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. He found it, she whispered. Found what my queen, a servant, asked from the shadows. The echo, Alma said. The breadcrumb I left for him. The doors to the observation deck hissed open. Duke Malric strode in, flanked by his personal guard. He did not bow. Cancel the wedding battle, Malric demanded. Alma turned slowly. I do not take orders from my generals, Malric. This has gone too far, Malric growled. The human is resonating. I felt the tremors in the ship's hull. He is adapting to the blood song too quickly. It is unnatural. If he steps into the Black Palace, he will not just embarrass us. He will expose us. Expose what? Alma asked innocently. The prophecy, Malric said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. The Dawn King. The one with blood that burns like the sun. The one who can bridge the gap between the night and the day. Children's stories, Alma dismissed. Is it? Malric stepped closer. The human has the genetic marker. I saw his medical scans from the intake. He carries a dormant gene sequence that matches the royal line of the First Dynasty. He is not just human, Alma. He is something else. If he completes the ritual, if he awakens that blood, then he will save us, Alma said. He will destroy us, Malric roared. He will erase our culture. He will make us weak. I will not allow it. I will invoke the right of challenge before the battle begins. I will send my champion to kill him in the locker room if I have to. You will follow the protocol, Alma said, her eyes flashing with black fire. Or I will have you spaced, Malric sneered. You are weak, old woman. You have let your guilt over the war rot your brain. If you will not protect the Empire, I will. He spun on his heel and marched out. Alma turned back to the screen. She watched Hugh sitting on the floor, talking quietly to Louise. He is right, Alma whispered to the empty room. He is the Dawn King, and he is going to destroy everything. I am counting on it. The day of arrival came. The umbral crown docked at the Black Palace. The station was a masterpiece of Gothic engineering, a spired cathedral floating in the center of a dark nebula. It was neutral ground, but the atmosphere was anything but peaceful. Thousands of ships crowded the docking rings. Federation cruisers floated uneasily alongside Imperial destroyers. The media presence was overwhelming. Drone cameras buzzed like swarms of metallic flies. Hugh, Louise, and Pauline sat in the prep room, deep within the station's bowels. The walls were lined with ceremonial armor. Hugh held the Dawnfire drive in his hand. He had finished the code modifications. He had named the file the Glitch Ritual. The plan was simple. During the second act, the Song of Judgment, he would interface with the sonic amplifiers. He would trigger the drive. It would release a hypersonic pulse containing the Dawnfire data. It would overload the nervous system of every vampire in the station. It would be a massacre. The end of the war. He looked at Louise. She was fastening her armor, her movements mechanical. She looked tired. She looked human. "Sleep, my little star," the melody haunted him. "Hugh," Pauline asked. She was wearing a suit of light mesh armor that looked too big for her. "Are you okay? You are vibrating." "I am fine," Hugh said, shoving the drive into his gauntlet's interface slot. "We can do this," Louise said, trying to sound brave. "We just have to hold the rhythm. We defend each other. We survive." "Right," Hugh said. "Survive." He looked at the drive. He was about to kill them. He was about to kill the only two beings in the universe who understood his pain. He was about to kill the girl who remembered his wife's song. "It is for the greater good," the soldier in him said. "They are monsters. They are weapons. They are your daughters," a traitorous voice whispered. 5 minutes to showtime, a voice boomed over the intercom. Hugh stood up. He pulled on his helmet. The HUD flared to life, casting a red glow over his face. "Let's go," Hugh said. "Let's give them a show they will never forget." He walked out into the corridor, the Dawnfire drive pulsing against his wrist like a second heartbeat. The path of revenge was straight and clear. So why did his feet feel so heavy? Outside, the roar of the crowd began. It sounded like hunger. The Black Palace did not orbit a star. It drifted in the gravitational doldrums between the Federation border and the Imperial Dark Sector, a massive construct of obsidian metal and Gothic spires that looked less like a space station and more like a cathedral torn from the surface of a nightmare planet and flung into the void. It was neutral ground, a place where diplomacy and espionage danced a waltz on a floor made of glass, beneath which the nebula swirled in colors of bruised purple and blood orange. When the umbral crown docked, the sensation was not a mechanical thud, but a biological sigh, as the living tissue of the flagship connected with the cold steel of the station. Hugh stood in the airlock staging area, adjusting the collar of his dress uniform. It was a Federation surplus formal coat he had dug out of storage, smelling faintly of mothballs and old ozone. Beside him, Louise and Pauline were being fussed over by a team of drone stylists. "This is ridiculous," Hugh muttered, pulling at the stiff fabric. "I look like a waiter at a funeral." "You look distinguished," Louise said. She was dressed in a gown of shimmering nanoweave that shifted color from midnight blue to charcoal gray, depending on the light. It was armor disguised as fashion. Besides, the cameras are not here for your fashion sense. They are here for the spectacle. "They are here for the freak show," Pauline corrected. She was spinning in a circle, trying to make her dress, which appeared to be made of solidified smoke, flare out. "Look at me. I am the tragic younger princess, caught in a crossfire of forbidden love and political incompetence. The Poles are going to love me." The airlock cycled open. The roar of the crowd hit them before the air did. It was a wall of sound shouts, alien chattering, the whine of camera drones, and the thrum of thousands of heartbeats. The docking bay was packed. There were Federation humans in gray jumpsuits, Imperial vampires in their terrifyingly elegant finery, and dozens of other species from the non-aligned systems. "Stay close," Hugh said, his hand instinctively drifting to his hip, where his sidearm would usually be. Today, however, weapons were banned. He only had the Dawnfire drive concealed within the intricate cufflink on his left wrist. As they stepped onto the red carpet, the flashbulbs blinded them. Hugh the human. A reporter with 3 eyes and a microphone grafted to its chin shouted, "Is it true you kidnapped the princesses to sell their organs on the black market?" "No," Hugh said, his voice amplified by the collar mic he had been forced to wear. "The market for vampire organs is down this quarter. I am holding on to them until the prices rebound." A ripple of laughter went through the human section of the crowd. The vampires hissed. Sir. A human reporter shoved a recording device in his face. Critics say this wedding battle is a sham to cover up a romantic relationship between you and Princess Louise. How do you respond to allegations of interspecies perversion? Hugh stopped. He looked at the reporter, then at Louise. She stood tall, her face a mask of icy composure, but he could see the tremor in her hands. I respond, Hugh said, leaning into the mic, by asking why the Federation is so obsessed with who I might love, while ignoring the fact that the Empire has been raiding our outer colonies for 20 years. If falling in love with the enemy stops a war, then you should be thanking me, not judging my dating life. The crowd went silent for a second, then erupted. The internet feed displayed on massive holographic screens above the bay showed Hugh's approval rating spiking in real time. Nice pivot, Pauline whispered out of the side of her mouth. You are practically a politician. Should I faint? I feel like fainting would sell the drama. Do not dare, Hugh growled. They were ushered through the chaos by a phalanx of station security guards, heading toward the diplomatic suites. As they rounded a corner, a woman stepped out from the shadows. She wore the sharp, tailored suit of a Federation diplomat, and her eyes were as warm as a glacier. Ambassador Nia Grant. Make a hole, Grant ordered the security team. They obeyed instantly. She walked up to Hugh, looking him up and down with an expression of critical appraisal. You play the crowd well, Hugh, Grant said. The reluctant hero with a sharp tongue archetype. It plays well with the working-class demographics on Earth. Ambassador, Hugh nodded. I did not know I was auditioning. You are always auditioning, Grant said, falling into step beside him as they walked down the long, glass-walled corridor. She lowered her voice. Listen to me closely. You are the most dangerous man in the galaxy right now. If you die in that arena, the human population will riot. They will demand war. If you win, you shatter the imperial hierarchy. Either way, you are a catalyst. I am just trying to survive the week, Hugh said. Do not play coy with me, Grant snapped. I know about the Dawnfire drive. Intelligence suggests you still have the data. Hugh kept his face perfectly still. I handed that over years ago. We both know that is a lie, Grant said. She stopped grabbing his arm. Her grip was surprisingly strong. If you are planning to use that weapon, you need to know the cost. If the Empire falls into chaos, the power vacuum will be filled by warlords like Malric. It will be a bloodbath that spills over into our space. I need a treaty, Hugh, not a crater. And if Malric wins, Hugh asked. If he kills us, then you die a martyr, Grant said simply. And I use your death to sanction heavy sanctions against the Empire. Either way, the Federation wins. Just try not to make a mess on the carpet. She patted his arm, smiled for a passing camera drone, and walked away. She is pleasant, Louise said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. I can see why you prefer the company of machines. She is doing her job, Hugh said, rubbing his arm. Her job just happens to involve trading lives for signatures. Deep in the engineering sublevels of the Black Palace, the air smelled of ozone and recycled water. Dr. Rowan Blake adjusted his spectacles and looked at the reading on his scanner. He was a small man, nervous by nature, but brilliant when it came to biodigital interfaces. He was officially here as a neutral observer for the Biological Safety Commission. Unofficially, he was looking for a ghost. The signal is faint, Blake muttered to himself. But it is there. A carrier wave embedded in the local acoustic network. He tapped the screen. The frequency matched the theoretical output of the Dawnfire protocol, the weapon he and Hugh had theorized about a decade ago. But it had been modified. It was not just a raw blast of data anymore. It was structured, musical. He is hiding it in the song, Blake realized, a cold sweat breaking out on his forehead. He is going to broadcast the kill code through the blood song. He looked up at the ceiling, imagining the arena above. If Hugh triggered that signal at full amplification, it would not just disable the enemy combatants. It would fry the neural pathways of every vampire on the station. It was not a surgical strike. It was a mass execution. "Hugh, you fool," Blake whispered. "You are not a soldier anymore. You are a butcher." He reached for his comms unit to alert Ambassador Grant, but then hesitated. If he reported it, Grant would arrest Hugh. Malric would execute the girls. The war would restart. Blake lowered his hand. He needed to find Hugh. He needed to talk him down before the music started. While Blake hunted for a conscience, Duke Malric was busy burying one. In a restricted maintenance shaft directly beneath the main arena, Malric watched as his technicians finished installing a device that looked like a jagged black heart. It throbbed with a sickening violet light. "The dark field inverter is primed, my lord," the lead technician hissed, bowing low. "It is tapped directly into the station's geothermal regulator." "Excellent," Malric said. His voice was a deep rumble in the confined space. "When activated, it will create a localized singularity. The arena will implode. The gravity well will crush everyone inside the Queen, the human, the traitors." "And the station?" the technician asked. "Collateral damage," Malric said with a shrug. "We will blame it on human terrorism. We will say the human brought a bomb. The footage of the explosion will be the perfect recruitment tool. The galaxy will see the Federation as cowards who attack weddings." "But, my lord," the technician hesitated. "You will be on the observation deck. The blast radius." "I will be on my shuttle," Malric smiled, revealing his long, serrated fangs. "I have a sudden diplomatic emergency to attend to just before the ceremony concludes. History is written by the survivors, not the martyrs." He placed a heavy hand on the technician's shoulder. "You, however, will remain here to ensure the device triggers manually if the remote signal fails. It is a great honor." The technician paled, but nodded. "For the Empire." "For the Empire," Malric echoed, turning to leave. He had a wedding to crash. The training room assigned to Hugh and the princesses was soundproofed, but it felt like the walls were listening. They had been practicing for 48 hours straight. "Again," Hugh said, wiping sweat from his brow. "Measure 42. The harmony keeps drifting." "It drifts because you are anticipating the beat," Louise said, frustration edging her voice. She sat on the floor, her legs folded under her. "You are approaching the blood song like a schematic. Step 1, Step 2. It is not linear, Hugh. It is fluid. You have to feel the dip in the energy before you vocalize it." "I am an engineer," Hugh snapped. "I like linear. Linear keeps bridges from falling down." "This is not a bridge," Pauline said, from where she was lying on her back staring at the ceiling. "It is a tightrope, and we are all wearing clown shoes." "Pauline, please," Louise sighed. "I am just saying," Pauline rolled over. "We are trying to synchronize 3 completely different minds. One of us is a centuries-old biological weapon disguised as a teenager. One is a sarcastic nihilist who misses her cat, which I never had, by the way, I just made that up, and one is a human with enough repressed trauma to fill a black hole." Hugh stopped. He looked at Pauline. "Is that what you see when we link repressed trauma?" "It is loud, Hugh," Pauline said softly. "It is like static in the background of the song." "You are angry." "You are so angry that it hurts my teeth." Hugh looked away. He walked to the window, staring out at the nebula. The Dawnfire code was ready. It was woven into the glitch ritual, the modified version of the blood song they were practicing. When they hit the high crescendo in the 3rd act, he would trigger the cufflink. The song would carry the virus. He looked at the reflection of the 2 girls in the glass. If he did this, the anger would stop. The war would end. But looking at them, he didn't feel like a hero. He felt like a fraud. "Let's take 5, Hugh said. Pauline scrambled up and ran to the food replicator. "Finally, I am going to see if this machine can make pizza. I have read about pizza. It sounds like a geometric miracle." Louise stood up and walked over to Hugh. She stood beside him, looking out at the stars. She did not touch him, but he could feel her heat signature. It was cooler than a human's, but it was there. "You are doubting it," Louise said quietly. "Doubting what?" "The plan," she said. "I do not know exactly what you have hidden in the song, Hugh, but I know it is a weapon, and I know you are wondering if you can pull the trigger." Hugh turned to face her. Her violet eyes were searching his face not with malice but with a terrifying amount of understanding. "They killed my family, Louise," he said. "Your people. Maybe not you personally, but the system that created you, the culture that feeds on us. If I have a chance to stop it, do I not have a duty to take it?" "Justice is a duty," Louise said. "Revenge is a drug. It feels like a cure, but it just eats you from the inside." She reached out and took his hand. Her skin was smooth, like polished stone. "That memory," she whispered. "The lullaby. I have been thinking about it. When we link, I feel the love you had for them. It is overwhelming. It is brighter than any star I have ever seen. If you use that love to fuel a massacre, you will put that light out forever." Hugh looked at their joined hands. The contrast, his rough, scarred skin against her pale, perfect fingers, was stark. "I do not know how to be anything else," Hugh admitted. "I have been a soldier or a grieving widower for so long. I do not know who Hugh is without the war." "Then let us find out," Louise said. She stepped closer. The distance between them was negligible now. "We survive the battle. We force the treaty. We make a new world. And in that world, maybe you can just be Hugh." For a moment, the tension in the room shifted. It wasn't political or military anymore. It was personal, electric. Hugh felt a pull toward her that had nothing to do with blood laws or resonance. "Hey!" Pauline shouted from across the room. "The machine says pizza invalid. This is a hate crime. I am adding this to my list of grievances against the universe." The moment broke. Hugh let go of Louise's hand, stepping back. Louise smiled a small, sad expression. "We should practice," she said. "Malric will not wait for us to sort out our existential crises." Later, that cycle, unable to sleep, Hugh wandered the lower levels of the station. He told the guards he needed to walk off the adrenaline. He found himself in the service sector. This was where the station's maintenance staff lived. And to his surprise, many of them were vampires. But they were not the high-born aristocrats he saw in the throne room. These were runts. Their skin was gray and patchy. They wore utilitarian jumpsuits. They looked tired. He watched from a catwalk as a group of vampire workers sat around a table in a cramped mess hall. They were drinking a thick, brown sludge from metal pouches, synthetic plasma, the cheap kind. "I heard the Queen is promising better imports," one of them said, his voice raspy. "Maybe we will finally get the iron supplements we need." "Dream on," another laughed. "The highborn keep the good stuff. We just keep the air filters running." "I hope the human wins," a younger one said timidly. "If the harvest laws change, maybe we can trade with the humans. Real food. I heard they have fruit that grows in the sun. Imagine tasting the sun." Hugh gripped the railing of the catwalk. His knuckles turned white. These were the targets. The Dawnfire virus did not discriminate. It attacked the specific genetic markers of the vampire species. It would kill Malric, yes, but it would also kill these workers. It would kill the ones who just wanted to taste a piece of fruit. It would kill the teenager who hoped the human would win. "God," Hugh whispered. Dr. Blake was right. He wasn't building a defense. He was building a gas chamber. He turned and walked back toward the lift, his steps heavy. The clarity of his hatred was gone, replaced by a murky, suffocating shade of gray. The summons came an hour before the wedding battle was set to begin. "The Queen requests your presence," the Praetorian Guard said. "Alone." Hugh checked his cufflink. The Dawnfire was armed. He followed the guard to the highest spire of the Black Palace. Alma was waiting for him on the observation balcony. The roof was open to the void, held back by a shimmer field. The stars were incredibly bright here, unpolluted by the atmosphere. She looked ancient. Without her armor, wearing only a simple robe of black silk, she looked less like a monster, and more like a weary statue carved from ice. "It is beautiful, is it not?" Alma said, not turning around. "The silence." "It is quiet," Hugh said, standing 5 paces behind her. "Before the storm." "Do you know why I chose you, Hugh?" Alma asked. She turned. Her eyes were pools of ink, but there was no hostility in them. Only exhaustion. "Because I am a convenient pawn," Hugh said. "Or because you want to humiliate the Federation." "I chose you because you are a father," Alma said. Hugh flinched. "Do not talk about my family." "I must," Alma said. She walked to the railing. "Before the Night War, there was a time when our species mingled. Did you know that we had human poets in our courts? We had vampire philosophers teaching in your universities. We thought we could transcend biology." She looked at him. "Then the hunger returned. Resources dwindled. The war faction rose. I made choices, Hugh. Terrible choices. I chose survival over morality. I ordered the harvests." "You admit it," Hugh said. "I never denied it," Alma said. "But now we face a new extinction. Not from war, but from stagnation. My people are dying. We are inbred, arrogant, and trapped in the dark. We need the sun, Hugh. Not just the blood that carries it, but the spirit that lives in it." She pointed at the Dawnfire device on his wrist. "I know what that is," she said softly. Hugh froze. He tensed, ready to fight. "You do not need to draw your weapon," Alma said. "If I wanted to stop you, I would have vented this room into space 5 minutes ago. I know you have the Dawnfire. Malric knows it too, though he does not know where you have hidden it." "Then why am I still alive?" Hugh asked. "Because I want to see what you do with it," Alma said. "That weapon is the ultimate test. It gives you the power of a god. You can wipe us out. You can end the threat forever. It is the easy choice, the logical choice." She stepped closer, until she was looming over him. "But tell me, Dawn King," she whispered, using the forbidden title. "If you kill us all, what will you tell the children? Not my daughters. The children who are not born yet. The hybrids. The ones who will carry both our blood. Will you tell them their father saved the world? Or will you tell them he burned half of it, because he was too afraid to forgive?" Hugh stared at her. His heart was hammering against his ribs. "There are no hybrids," he said. "They are myths." "Are they?" Alma smiled. It was a cryptic, sad smile. "Look at Louise. Look at yourself. The universe is stranger than you think, engineer." She turned back to the stars. "Go. The arena awaits. Make your choice. But know this, the sun does not only burn. It also illuminates. Decide which aspect you serve." The arena was a bowl of noise. The Black Palace's central amphitheater seated 50,000, and every seat was full. The roar was physical, a vibration that shook the teeth in Hugh's skull. He stood in the tunnel entrance. Louise and Pauline were beside him. Louise looked terrified, but resolute. Pauline was bouncing on her toes, a manic energy radiating off her. "Okay," Pauline said. "Game plan. We go out there, we do the dance, we sing the song, we try not to die. If we survive, I want ice cream. I do not care if I am lactose intolerant. I want the experience." Hugh looked at them. He looked at the cufflink on his wrist. The code was locked in. One command and the glitch ritual would execute. He thought about the workers in the mess hall. He thought about the lullaby. He thought about Alma's words. "The sun does not only burn." "Hugh," Louise touched his arm. "It is time." The gates groaned open. The lights hit them, blinding white spotlights that cut through the darkness. "Ladies and gentlemen, sentients of all systems," the announcer's voice boomed. "Welcome to the wedding battle." They stepped out onto the obsidian sand of the arena floor. The crowd screamed. High above in the VIP box, Malric looked down with a sneer, his hand hovering over a remote detonator. In the shadows of the machinery beneath their feet, the dark field inverter began to hum. A deep, seismic vibration rippled through the station. "Did you feel that?" Louise asked, looking down at the ground. "I felt it," Hugh said. He looked up at Malric. He saw the Duke's smile. He is not planning to fight, Hugh realized. He is planning to flip the board. The first note of the ceremonial music thundered through the speakers. The floating blades of the Dance of Avoidance lowered from the ceiling, glowing with lethal plasma. Hugh grabbed Louise and Pauline's hands. "Link up," Hugh shouted. "Deep sync now." "But the song hasn't started," Pauline cried. "Forget the song," Hugh yelled as the first blade swung toward them. "We are improvising." As the blade sliced the air, where their heads had been a second ago, Hugh felt the connection snap into place. He felt Louise's fear and Pauline's desperate courage. And for the first time, he opened his mind fully. He didn't show them a wall. He showed them the fire. And beneath the arena, the bomb began its countdown. The Black Palace Amphitheater was not merely a stadium. It was a sensory weapon designed to overwhelm. 50,000 spectators filled the concentric rings that rose, like the ribs of a leviathan, around the central obsidian floor. The noise was a physical pressure, a wall of sound composed of screeching alien dialects, the stomp of boots, and the low subsonic thrum of the station's gravity generators. Hugh stood at the center of the arena, the black sand crunching beneath his boots. To his left stood Louise, her face a mask of pale determination, the nano-weave of her dress shimmering like oil on water. To his right was Pauline, who was currently vibrating with an energy that was either terror or caffeine withdrawal. High above them, suspended on a platform of anti-gravity glass, sat the judges. Queen Alma sat on her throne of dark coral, her expression unreadable. Beside her, Duke Malric leaned forward, his massive hands gripping the railing, his eyes burning with a predatory anticipation. In the VIP box designated for the United Humanity Federation, Ambassador Nia Grant watched through magnifiers, her posture rigid. "The rules of the first movement are simple," the announcer's voice boomed, echoing from speakers that seemed to be everywhere and nowhere. "The dance of avoidance. The groom and his brides must move as one. The environment will be hostile. Separation means death. Synchronization means survival. Let the wedding battle begin." The lights in the arena died, plunging 50,000 people into total darkness. Then the music started. It was not music in the human sense. It was a rhythmic pounding, a bass frequency that rattled the bones in Hugh's chest, overlaid with the high-pitched screech of plasma coils igniting. "Heads up!" Hugh shouted. From the ceiling, huge pendulums of energy detached and began to swing. They were not solid metal, but arcs of violet plasma, hot enough to slice through a ship's hull. At the same time, the gravity in the arena shifted. One moment down was beneath their feet. The next, gravity tilted 45 degrees to the west. Hugh slipped his boots, losing traction on the shifting sand. He would have fallen directly into the path of a descending blade if Louise had not grabbed his arm. With strength that belied her slender frame, she swung him around, using the altered gravity to pivot him mid-air. "Move with the beat!" Louise shouted over the roar. "Do not fight the gravity! Surf it!" They landed in a crouch as a blade hissed past their ears, singing the air. "This is not a wedding!" Pauline yelled, scrambling to her feet as the floor tilted again. "This is a blender with a soundtrack. If I survive this, I want the invitation to explicitly state discount on cash gifts due to high risk of bisection." The crowd laughed. It was a ripple of amusement that cut through the tension. Humans in the stands cheered at the audacity of the small vampire girl. "Focus!" Hugh ordered. The tempo increased. The blade swung faster, weaving a net of violet death. The gravity shifted every 4 measures, turning the floor into a wall, then a ceiling, then a slide. Hugh realized that trying to march like a soldier would get them killed. He had to think like an engineer. He had to calculate the vectors. "Pauline, 3 o'clock, jump on the downbeat," Hugh commanded. "Louise, anchor us." Pauline leaped, trusting Hugh blindly. Hugh caught her wrist, and Louise caught his other hand. Using the centrifugal force of the swinging blades and the shifting gravity, Hugh swung Pauline around like a human projectile. She kicked off a passing pylon, changing their collective momentum, and pulled them all out of the kill box just as 3 blades collided in a shower of sparks. It was acrobatic. It was chaotic. It was undeniably human in its messiness, yet vampire in its grace. On the screens above, the crowd saw something they had never witnessed. Usually, the wedding battle was a display of rigid, disciplined martial arts. This was different. This was jazz. It was improvisation. Hugh was not just surviving. He was leading. He treated the lethal obstacle course like a complex machine that he was dismantling in real time. He laughed when he narrowly dodged a blade, a sound of pure adrenaline. "Look at them!" a young vampire in the lower tiers shouted, pointing at the screen. "They are not fighting the rhythm. They are rewriting it." Malric, watching from the high balcony, slammed his fist onto the railing. The metal dented under the impact. "They are mocking the tradition," Malric snarled. "Why are the blades not faster? Increase the velocity." "We cannot, my lord," a technician whispered, terrified. "The system is maxed out. They are good." Down on the sand, the music reached a crescendo. The gravity neutralized completely, leaving the 3 of them floating in 0G at the center of the arena. The blades retracted. Hugh, Louise, and Pauline drifted back to back, breathing hard. They were alive. The crowd erupted. It was not polite applause. It was a roar of approval. Flowers, black roses from the vampire sector, synthetic lilies from the human sector, rained down onto the force field, protecting the arena floor. "We did it," Pauline gasped, wiping sweat from her forehead. "I did not lose a limb. I consider this a total victory." "It is not over," Louise said, her eyes fixed on the balcony. "That was just the warm-up. Now comes the judgment." The lights shifted from harsh combat white to a deep, introspective crimson. The announcer spoke again, his voice lower, more solemn. "The bodies have survived. Now the souls must be weighed." The second movement, the Song of Judgment. The triad must project the truth of their bond. Let the blood song speak. The arena fell silent. This was the holy part of the ritual, the part where secrets were flayed open. Hugh felt the cufflink on his wrist grow warm. The Dawnfire drive was active. The glitch ritual code was cued. This is it, Hugh thought. I upload the code. I trigger the pulse. And the Empire falls. He looked at the crowd. He saw the faces of the vampire commoners pressing against the glass. He saw the human delegation. He saw the fear and the hope entangled in 50,000 expressions. "Link," Louise whispered. "Do not hold back, Hugh. If you hide, the feedback will shatter our minds." Hugh closed his eyes. He reached out with his mind, finding the cold, sharp presence of Louise and the flickering, bright, chaotic energy of Pauline. The connection snapped into place. The audio amplifiers in the arena picked up the resonance of their blood, turning their internal mental state into audible sound. It started as a low hum, a vibration that shook the dust on the floor. Then, the holographic projectors engaged. The arena filled with images drawn directly from their shared consciousness. At first, it was dark. The cold of the laboratory tanks where Louise and Pauline had been made. The fear of the needle. The loneliness of the glass cage. The audience gasped. Malric stiffened. These were state secrets being broadcast in high definition. Then, Hugh's memories flooded in. Fire. The burning skyline of Aegis Prime. The scream of dropships. The sound in the arena grew dissonant, ugly. It was the sound of war. The crowd flinched. This was the narrative they expected, the human hatred, the monster's cruelty. But then, Hugh did something he had not planned. He looked at the Dawnfire prompt in his mind's eye. Execute kill protocol. He hesitated. Instead of pulling the trigger on the weapon, he pulled a memory. A memory he had buried so deep, he thought it was gone. The hologram shifted. The fire vanished. A kitchen appeared. It was small, messy, and bathed in the golden light of a Sunday morning sun. There was the smell of coffee impossible to convey technologically, yet the synesthesia of the blood song made everyone smell it. A woman was there. She was laughing, trying to scrape burnt toast. A small boy was sitting on the counter, kicking his legs. It was mundane. It was boring. It was beautiful. The vampire audience stared. They had been taught that humans were livestock creatures of mud and panic. They had never seen this. They had never felt the warmth of a human son through a father's eyes. "He loves them," a vampire woman in the stands whispered, clutching her own child. "He loves them just as we do." The dissonance in the music smoothed out. It became a melody, a sad longing tune. And then, the impossible happened. In the shared mental space, Louise stepped forward into Hugh's memory. She walked into the kitchen. She looked at the woman, Hugh's dead wife, and Louise began to sing. It was not a vampire war chant. It was not a chaotic scream. It was the lullaby. "Sleep, my little star, the night is not so far." The voice that rang out through the Black Palace was not just Louise's. It was a double harmonic. Underneath the vampire princess's soprano was the faint, ghostly echo of a human woman's alto. Hugh's eyes snapped open. He stared at Louise. She was weeping, her eyes wide with shock, as the song poured out of her. She was not learning it. She was remembering it. The effect on the arena was cataclysmic. The song hit the crowd like a physical wave. Vampires whose culture was built on the sanctity of blood and memory fell to their knees. The purity of the emotion, the grief of a husband, the confusion of a daughter, the love of a mother transcended species. Ambassador Nia Grant stood up, her hand over her mouth. "My God," she whispered, "that is not a performance." Up on the balcony, Queen Alma closed her eyes, a single tear of black blood tracing a line down her marble cheek. "The circle closes," she murmured. But Duke Malric did not weep. He watched the crowd swaying. He saw the hatred evaporating, replaced by empathy. He saw his power base crumbling. If the humans were seen as people, if the princesses were seen as bridges, rather than traitors, the war faction was finished. "Enough," Malric roared. His voice was amplified by his command suit, shattering the delicate melody of the lullaby. "This is sorcery," Malric bellowed, drawing his energy sword. The blade crackled with unstable red lightning. "The human pollutes the sacred rite. He manipulates the minds of the royal daughters. I declare the right invalid." Malric leaped from the balcony. He fell 200 feet, landing in the center of the arena, with a shockwave that knocked Hugh, Louise, and Pauline off their feet. The holographic kitchen flickered and died, replaced by the harsh reality of the black sand. "I invoke the honor challenge," Malric shouted, pointing his sword at Hugh. "I will cleanse this stain myself." The crowd screamed in protest, but the Praetorian guards hesitated. An honor challenge was sacred. Hugh scrambled up dust, coating his face. He checked his wrist. The Dawnfire drive was still active. "You are afraid, Malric," Hugh said, his voice shaking but loud. "You are afraid because they like the song." "I am afraid of nothing, meat," Malric hissed. He lunged. Hugh rolled the red lightning, singeing his coat. He was fast, but Malric was a blur of speed and strength. The Duke backhanded Hugh, sending him flying across the arena. Hugh hit a stone pillar, feeling ribs crack. "Hugh!" Louise and Pauline screamed, rushing forward. Malric unleashed a wave of telekinetic force, pinning the two girls to the ground. "Stay down, abominations. I will deal with you after I gut your pet." Hugh struggled to his knees. He tasted blood. He looked at Malric, who was stalking toward him, like a nightmare made of stone. He had no choice. He had to use it. Kettle, Hugh whispered into his comms. Unlock the safety. Safety unlocked, the AI replied. Goodbye, Hugh. It has been educational. Hugh raised his wrist. He did not look at the crowd. He looked at Malric. Burn, Hugh whispered. He triggered the Dawnfire. He expected a pulse of sonic death. He expected the vampires in the room to scream as their cells unraveled. But that is not what happened. The device on his wrist flared with a blinding golden light. But instead of radiating outward to kill the vampires, the light turned inward. It shot up Hugh's arm. It engulfed him. And simultaneously high on the balcony, the same golden light erupted from Queen Alma. Target acquisition error, a mechanical voice blared from the cufflink. Solar bloodline detected. Focusing purification protocol on subjects 1 and 2. Hugh screamed as his blood felt like it was turning into lava. He fell to the sand writhing. It's targeting me, Hugh realized through the haze of pain. It's not killing the vampires. It's targeting the carriers of the sun gene. Me and the Queen. Malric stopped, confused by the golden light radiating from the human. Then he laughed. A cruel booming sound. The weapon rejected you, Malric crowed. You tried to poison us and it eats you instead. He raised his sword for the killing blow. But he never brought it down. A shadow fell over him. Queen Alma had leaped from the balcony. She did not land gracefully. She crashed between Malric and Hugh, her body glowing with the same golden fire that was consuming Hugh. Mother! Louise screamed. Malric! Alma shouted, her voice distorted by the energy coursing through her. You want a monster, face me! Malric snarled and thrust his sword forward. At the same moment, he activated the remote detonator in his other hand, the dark field inverter hidden beneath the arena. If I cannot rule it, I will break it, Malric yelled. The device beneath the floor detonated. But because of the immense energy of the Dawnfire pouring off Alma and Hugh, the explosion did not behave as predicted. The dark field. A singularity of pure gravity collided with the Dawnfire, a singularity of pure light. The result was a tear in the fabric of reality. A rift opened in the center of the arena. It was a jagged wound in space, a swirling vortex of white and black that began to suck the air, the light and the sand into it. The sound was deafening. The entire Black Palace groaned as its structural integrity failed. Hold the field! Louise shouted to Pauline. Sing! Sing the shielding chant! The two girls, pinned by the gravity of the rift, grabbed hands. They began to scream a discordant, powerful harmony. Their voices wove a cage of sonic energy around the rift, preventing it from expanding and swallowing the entire station. They were the only thing keeping 50,000 people from being sucked into oblivion. Hugh, blinded by the light in his veins, felt a surge of power he had never known. It was not the adrenaline of a human soldier. It was something ancient. He felt the heat of a star in his marrow. He stood up. The pain was gone, replaced by a terrifying clarity. His eyes were no longer brown. They were burning gold. He looked at Malric, who was struggling against the pull of the rift, digging his sword into the ground to anchor himself. You, Hugh said. His voice was not his own. It sounded like a solar flare. Hugh stepped forward. He did not walk. He flowed. He grabbed Malric by the throat. The Duke's obsidian armor began to melt under Hugh's touch. What are you? Malric gasped, his red eyes wide, with the first true fear he had ever felt. I am the sunrise, Hugh said. He lifted the massive Duke with one hand and hurled him toward the rift. Malric screamed as the gravity caught him. He clawed at the air, but the vortex was merciless. He was pulled into the swirling chaos of light and shadow. His body twisted, stretched, and then vanished into the tear. But the rift was not satisfied. It pulled harder. Alma, kneeling on the sand, her body rapidly turning to ash as the Dawnfire consumed her, looked up at Hugh. Save them, she whispered. Save my daughters. Save your people. She pushed herself up and threw her body into the rift, using her own mass and the energy within her to plug the hole. "No!" Hugh yelled. He lunged for her, grabbing her hand. The contact completed the circuit. The Dawnfire, the dark field, the Queen, and the human. The light exploded. It was brighter than a supernova. It blinded the cameras. It blinded the crowd. The last thing Louise saw was Hugh glowing like a deity, being pulled into the white void alongside her mother. "Father!" she screamed. Then there was only silence. The light faded. The arena was destroyed. The sand was glass. The rift was gone. Malric was gone. Alma was gone. And where Hugh had stood there was nothing but a scorch mark in the shape of a man and a single small cufflink spinning on the floor, its data light blinking a slow fading red. The silence was the first thing Hugh noticed. It was not the heavy, suffocating silence of the vacuum, nor the tense, ringing silence of a battlefield before the first shot. It was a fluid silence, thick and warm, like being submerged in a deep ocean of light. He was not in the arena. The black sand, the screaming crowd, the tearing rift, all of it was gone. He stood on a floor made of mirrored glass that stretched into infinity. Above him, there was no ceiling, only a sky filled with shifting ribbons of light, emerald green, violet, and burning gold. An aurora that breathed. "Welcome to the quiet room," a voice said. Hugh turned. Queen Alma stood there, but she was not the imposing monarch in obsidian armor he had fought beside. She was translucent, her form composed of the same drifting light as the sky above. She looked younger. Her features softened, stripped of the centuries of war and politics that had hardened her face like stone. "Am I dead?" Hugh asked. He looked at his hands. They were solid, but they glowed faintly with a golden pulse. "No," Alma said, walking toward him. Her feet made no sound on the glass. "You are in the space between heartbeats. This is the memory architecture of the Dawnfire. It is where the data lives. And now it is where we must talk." "Talk," Hugh let out a bitter laugh. "The last thing I remember, I was turning into a supernova and throwing a warlord into a black hole. I think we passed the stage for conversation." "We have only just arrived at it," Alma corrected gently. She gestured to the air, and two chairs formed out of the light, simple wooden chairs that looked exactly like the ones from Hugh's kitchen on Aegis Prime. "Please, sit. The processing speed here is infinite, but your human mind still requires linear narrative to understand what is happening to you." Hugh sat. It felt real. The wood felt rough under his fingers. "You called me the Dawn King," Hugh said. "Out there, before the explosion." "What did you mean?" Alma sighed, a sound like wind moving through chimes. "Tell me, Hugh. How does a retired mechanic survive 10 years on a moon where the temperature drops to -60 degrees without a heater? How does a human resist the psychic pressure of a royal vampire without going insane? How does a man activate a weapon coded for a bloodline he does not possess?" "I am stubborn," Hugh said. "You are a hybrid," Alma said. The words hung in the air, heavy and impossible. "That is a lie," Hugh said, standing up. "I was born on Mars. My parents were miners. I have the medical records." "You have the records we gave you," Alma said. She did not move. 80 years ago, before the Night War, there was a project. Project Daybreak. It was a collaboration between the visionary scientists of the Federation and the royal house of the Empire. We wanted to bridge the evolutionary gap. We wanted to create a being who could walk in the sun and navigate the dark. She pointed at him. "You were the success. You carry the solar gene of the vampire highborn spliced with the resilience of humanity. You are not a random soldier, Hugh. You are the bridge." Hugh shook his head, backing away. "No. I had a life. I had a wife. I had a son. Malric killed them. I remember the fire. I remember the smell." "You remember what I needed you to remember," Alma said. Her voice was filled with a terrible sadness. She waved her hand. The aurora above them shifted, coalescing into a screen. Hugh watched. He saw a different version of the attack on Aegis Prime. He saw Malric's ships descending, yes. But he did not see slaughter. He saw capture. He saw his wife and son being led onto a transport terrified but alive. He saw himself being dragged away screaming, injected with a serum. "It was a rescue," Alma whispered. "Or as close to one as I could manage. Malric had discovered what you were. He wanted to vivisect you and your family to weaponize the solar gene. I could not stop him openly without starting a civil war I would lose. So I staged the massacre." "You staged it!" Hugh's voice trembled with a rage so pure, it threatened to shatter the room. "You made me watch them die for 10 years. I have lived with that ghost. I have woken up every single night screaming." "I had to break you to hide you," Alma said, her eyes pleading. "If you knew they were alive, you would have come for them. Malric would have caught you. By implanting the memory of their death, I ensured you would hide. I ensured you would hate us. Your hatred was the only shield strong enough to keep you away from the Empire until you were ready." "Where are they?" Hugh demanded. "If they are alive, where are they?" Alma looked down. "The body is fragile, Hugh. The mind is resilient. Malric intercepted the transport. He could not find you, so he took them. He put them in the vats." Hugh felt his knees give way. He sank back into the chair. "They are dead," he whispered. "Their bodies are gone," Alma said. "But their essence, the song that remained." She looked at him with an intensity that burned. "Why do you think Louise knows the lullaby, Hugh? Why do you think Pauline has your wife's chaotic sense of humor? Why do you think you felt an instant biological imperative to protect them when you found them in your cabin?" Hugh stared at her. The horror was rising in his throat, choking him. "No," he rasped. "Do not say it." "They are not clones," Alma said quickly. "They are vessels. When I adopted the girls from the labs, they were empty shells. Their minds had been wiped by Malric's failed experiments. To save them, to give them a soul, I needed a template. I used the only compatible source I had, the memory archives of your family." She reached out, touching Hugh's hand. "Louise carries the memory of your wife's love, her music, her sorrow. Pauline carries the spark of your son's joy, his defiance. They are not your family reborn, Hugh. But they are the voice we kept. They are the echo." Hugh pulled his hand away. He felt like he was being torn apart. He looked at the empty air, thinking of Louise singing in the arena, thinking of Pauline making jokes about pizza. He wasn't protecting strangers. He wasn't even protecting daughters. He was protecting the scattered, remixed fragments of the people he loved. "You are a monster," Hugh whispered. "You played God with their souls. You turned my grief into a science experiment." "I am a queen who ran out of options," Alma said. "And now so are you." The room shifted again. The aurora darkened. "The Dawnfire is active," Alma said, her voice becoming clinical urgent. "It is currently holding the rift together, powered by my life force and your anger. But I cannot hold it forever. You have a choice, Dawn King." 2 pillars of light appeared before Hugh. "Option 1, Alma said, gesturing to the pillar of red fire. "You let the Dawnfire complete its original protocol. It will detonate. It will wipe out every vampire in the system, including Louise Pauline and Malric. The threat ends. Humanity is safe. You will be the last survivor." "And option 2, Hugh asked, his voice hollow. "Option 2, Alma pointed to a pillar of gold and green light. "You rewrite the code. You use your engineering mind. You take the solar gene inside you and you invert the signal. Instead of a weapon that destroys vampire blood, you create a field that alters it. An aurora field. It will change us, Hugh. It will rewrite our biology to feed on ambient light instead of blood. We will no longer be predators. But to do this, you must forgive." "Forgive." Hugh stood up, his fists clenched. "Forgive the years of war. Forgive you for lying to me. Forgive Malric. Not Malric, Alma said. Forgive yourself. Forgive yourself for surviving. Hugh looked at the lights. He thought about the 10 years of snow. He thought about the rifle on his wall. He thought about the hate that had kept him warm. It was comfortable, that hate. It was easy. Then he thought about the cabin. He thought about Louise wearing a blanket like a toga. He thought about Pauline asking for a cat. He thought about the lullaby. Sleep, my little star. If he chose the red fire, the music stopped forever. I am not a king, Hugh said quietly. He stepped toward the golden pillar. I am an engineer, Hugh said, and I fix what is broken. He reached into the light. It did not burn. It felt like cool water. He closed his eyes and visualized the code of the dawnfire. It was complex biological math, twisting like DNA. He saw the kill command, a sharp, jagged line of red code. He reached out with his mind and grabbed it. Delete, he thought. Replace. He began to weave a new structure. He used the memory of the sunlight on Aegis Prime. He used the rhythm of the lullaby. He used the feeling of a warm fire in a cold cabin. Function nourish. Function sustain. Function dawn. It is done, Hugh whispered. He looked at Alma. She was fading, her form dissolving into mist. Thank you, she said. She was smiling. It was the first time he had seen her truly smile. Take care of them, Hugh. They are high maintenance. Alma, Hugh shouted, reaching for her. The dawn is yours, she whispered. She shattered into a billion particles of light. Hugh opened his eyes. He was back in the arena. But the screaming had stopped. He was lying on the obsidian sand. The air was no longer filled with the coppery tang of blood. It smelled like ozone, like rain after a thunderstorm. He pushed himself up. His body ached, but it was a good ache, the ache of a fever that had finally broken. He looked up. The ceiling of the Black Palace was gone, or rather it was transparent. A massive dome of energy covered the station, swirling with the same emerald and gold lights he had seen in the memory room, the Aurora Field. It bathed the arena in a soft, perpetual twilight. Around him, thousands of vampires were standing up, looking at their hands, looking at the sky. They were not burning. They were breathing. The hunger, that sharp, desperate edge that was always in their eyes, was gone, replaced by a strange, peaceful confusion. Father! Hugh turned. Louise and Pauline were running toward him across the broken sand. They were battered, their dresses torn, but they were alive. Louise crashed into him first, burying her face in his chest. Pauline hit him a second later, wrapping her arms around his waist. You are alive, Louise sobbed. We thought you went into the rift. I took the scenic route, Hugh wheezed, patting her hair. He looked at Pauline. You okay, kid? I am traumatized, Pauline said, her voice muffled against his coat. But on the bright side, I feel weird. I do not feel hungry. I just feel full. Like I just ate a really big sandwich. Is this what being a plant feels like? Am I a vegetable now? Hugh laughed. It hurt his ribs, but he laughed. Something like that. He looked toward the center of the arena. The rift was gone. But on the ground where Malric had fallen, there was a scar in the reality of the floor. A patch of shadow that the aurora light could not touch. Hugh walked over to it, the girls clinging to him. He looked down into the shadow. Faintly, very faintly, he could hear a scream. It was distant, like a radio tune between stations. It was Malric. Is he dead? Louise asked, wiping her eyes. No, Hugh said. He is stuck. He is caught in the event horizon of the field. As long as the aurora holds, he stays there. A ghost in the machine. Good, Pauline said, kicking a pebble into the shadow. I hope he hates the music. A movement caught Hugh's eye. Ambassador Nia Grant was walking across the sand, stepping over the debris. She was followed by Dr. Rowan Blake and a stunned-looking Imperial High Council. Grant stopped in front of Hugh. She looked at the aurora sky, then at Hugh. You violated about 50 Federation protocols, Grant said. You rewrote the genetic destiny of an entire species without filling out a single form, and you destroyed a priceless space station. The station is still standing, Hugh pointed out. Mostly. Technically, Dr. Blake interrupted, scanning the air with his device. The station is now a biological entity. The field is sustaining it. The vampires are photosynthesizing Hugh. You turned them into solar collectors. You are welcome, Hugh said. Grant sighed, but there was a smirk tugging at the corner of her mouth. The Federation Council is going to have a stroke. But it is better than a war. Much better. She looked at the assembled vampires, who were watching Hugh with awe. They are waiting for a speech, Grant said. You are the Dawn King now, apparently. Hugh looked at the crowd. He looked at Louise and Pauline. I am not a king, Hugh said loudly, his voice carrying over the silent arena. And this is not a kingdom. He took Louise's hand. He took Pauline's hand. This is a second chance, Hugh said. For all of us. The hunger is gone. The war is over. Now comes the hard part. What is the hard part? Pauline whispered. Living together, Hugh said, 2 years later. The new cabin did not look like the old one. For one thing, it was not on a frozen moon. It was located on Orbital Habitat Ring 7, a neutral zone station, known for its excellent artificial weather and terrible property taxes. The cabin was suspended in a gravity bubble overlooking a garden of bioluminescent cherry trees. Hugh was under the sink wrestling with a pipe. Kettle, Hugh grunted. Pass me the hydrospanner. I am a highly advanced artificial intelligence capable of calculating slip-space trajectories, Kettle's voice droned from the counter. I am not a plumber's assistant. However, since you refuse to hire a professional here. A mechanical arm extended, dropping the wrench into Hugh's hand. Thanks, Hugh muttered. Warning, Kettle said. Atmospheric disturbance detected in the living room. Or rather, fashion disturbance. Hugh slid out from under the sink. What now? He walked into the living room. Louise and Pauline were standing there. They were no longer the terrified children he had found in the snow. Louise, now 20 by human standards, looked regal. She was wearing a dress made entirely of woven aurora light, which shifted colors with her mood. Currently, it was a calm, happy blue. Pauline, 18 and significantly taller, was wearing what looked like a human punk rock outfit. But the leather was synthetic, and the spikes were made of soft silicone. It is itching, Pauline complained, scratching her neck. Why do humans insist on collars? It is inefficient. It is a style choice, Louise said, adjusting her glowing hem. And stop complaining. We are late for the diplomatic summit. Ambassador Grant is going to kill us if we miss the signing of the fruit trade agreement. I hate fruit, Pauline grumbled. It is too sweet. I miss synthetic blood. It had texture. You are lying, Hugh said, wiping grease off his hands with a rag. I saw you eat 3 peaches for breakfast. Propaganda, Pauline sniffed. Hugh smiled. He looked at them. The family that shouldn't exist. The daughters of his enemy, who were also the daughters of his heart. A chime sounded at the door. I will get it, Pauline shouted. If it is the pizza drone, I am marrying it. The door slid open. It wasn't a pizza drone. A shimmer of light appeared in the doorway. It condensed, forming a familiar shape. It was translucent, hovering a few inches off the ground. Alma. Or rather the construct of Alma that lived in the Aurora field. She visited sometimes, usually, when she was bored of being a celestial battery. She looked at the scene. Hugh with grease on his face. Pauline in her punk gear. Louise glowing like a neon sign. Alma floated into the room, her eyes twinkling with mischief. Tell me, Hugh, Alma said, her voice echoing with the sound of wind chimes. Why are my vampire daughters well? They are not naked this time, but their fashion sense is a tragedy. Why are they in your cabin, human? Hugh laughed. It was a real laugh, loud and unburdened. Because they live here, Grandma, Pauline said, throwing an arm around the ghost's neck or trying to. Her arm passed through the light. And because we ran out of clean towels at the palace. Unacceptable, Alma tutted. I shall haunt the royal laundry staff immediately. Louise walked over to Hugh and kissed him on the cheek. We have to go, Dad. Do not wait up. If Malric tries to break out of the shadow dimension again, just hit him with the broom. Will do, Hugh said. He watched them leave, the three of them, a vampire princess, a punk rock hybrid, and a ghost queen arguing about who was going to drive the shuttle. Hugh stood in the doorway, watching them go. He touched the cufflink on his wrist, which was now just a piece of jewelry, dark and silent. The Dawnfire was gone. The war was history. He turned back to the sink. The pipe was still leaking. Kettle, Hugh said. Play the playlist. Which one, Hugh? Brooding silence or angry engineering? Play the lullaby, Hugh said. Playing Starless Night, Kettle confirmed. The soft, simple melody filled the cabin. Hugh picked up the wrench. He had a leak to fix. And for the first time in 100 years, he had all the time in the world to do it. The end.